John Hawley moved through the fractured valley with cautious steps as dawn drained its pale light over scorched ridges. War had scarred this world for years, and though both sides were exhausted, neither faction trusted the silence that came after each battle. His patrol suit hummed softly as it regulated heat and filtered toxins drifting in thin sheets across the cracked terrain. He carried no illusions of safety, for he had witnessed too many surprises in this conflict. Yet today, his orders were simple: sweep, observe, return. For once it seemed that simplicity might win over chaos. He followed a weathered trench that had caved in after orbital strikes during the night. The air still tasted metallic. Shattered crystal formations glimmered from the impact. He scanned the area for movement and picked up faint thermal traces. At first, he thought they were dying embers of machinery. Then he heard a soft cry. The sound did not resemble any known beast of this world. It carried a trembling note that triggered a deep instinct in him. A plea. A call of something small and frightened. He climbed over collapsed shielding plates that still radiated heat. Through the smoke, he saw a cluster of armored pods half buried in rubble. One had cracked open. A small creature emerged with slow, unsteady clawed steps. Its skin was pale blue, with a faint, luminescent pattern along its limbs and across its large eyes. It cried again and tried to climb out, only to slip and fall. John felt his muscles tense. This was no creature. This was a child. An enemy child. The offspring of the Alari, whose forces had battled humanity for control of the system. Training told him to report the discovery and wait for command. Logic told him that removing himself from danger was the wiser path. But something older than logic moved him. The child struggled again, and its cry split the quiet valley. Without hesitation, he hurried forward. He knelt and lifted the small form gently. It curled against his chest with surprising trust. He checked for wounds and found minor abrasions and bruises. Nothing fatal. Nothing threatening. Only fear. He secured the child inside the shockproof shell of his pack and signaled his team. No response came. Storm interference disrupted comes again. He weighed his options and chose to continue on foot toward the nearest outpost. As he moved, he felt the small life stir against his back. That tiny warmth kept him alert. He did not know why he cared, but he did. The ground rumbled moments later. A rising tremor warned him of incoming flyers. His visor marked 3 signatures streaking across the canyon lip. Alari scouts. They swept low, searching. He found himself caught in the open. Stealth was impossible. Running risked drawing fire. He pressed himself into the shadow of a jagged boulder and hoped their scanners would not detect human tech masked by the mineral deposits of the canyon wall. Bright beams passed overhead. The flyers circled once more. One slowed. John held his breath. The child whimpered. The flyer drifted closer until its underside nearly brushed the rock above him. Then a signal flared. Another cry. A mother calling her lost young. The flyer shot upward. The others followed. In seconds, they vanished behind the ridge. John allowed himself a single breath of relief. He continued through the canyon network, and by nightfall reached the abandoned supply point perched on a rocky ledge. There he made camp inside the reinforced shelter. The child slept curled inside a thermal blanket. He studied it with fascination. It breathed in small puffs and occasionally twitched as if dreaming. He found himself wondering what life for this child might have been before war dragged every species into conflict. He heated a ration pack and examined the data, volts salvaged from the cracked pod. Most records were encrypted, but a single identifier pulsed and played a faint tone. It matched the cry the flyers had broadcast earlier. A homing signal. A mother's beacon. He realized the parent must be searching desperately. He thought of the civilians lost during the earlier battles. Pain caught him. He knew that fear. He knew that grief. He looked at the sleeping child and felt his resolve settle. He would escort the young one back to safety, even if safety meant delivering it to a species that might kill him on sight. When morning came, he set out across the high ridge, guiding himself by vague intel on Alari nesting sites. The mountains here were sharp and glass-like, though each peak shed streams of mineral dust that drifted in shimmering curtains. As he ascended, he spotted fresh tracks, large, four-toed, clearly Alari. He kept his pulse steady. These were not soldier tracks. They lacked the deep press and heavy stride of armored troops. Instead, they were lighter and spaced widely as if the walker had been searching frantically. He entered a narrow pass, carved by ancient lava flows. The walls glowed faintly under the midday sun, as if lit from within. The child stirred and extended a tiny limb toward the glowing surface. John found himself smiling. He touched the warm stone as well, and wondered what such beauty must look like to a species that grew up among these luminescent heights. A roar echoed from ahead, not hostile, but anguished. A cry of loss. John stepped forward and soon saw her. The Alari mother stood atop a ridge of violet stone. Her tall form shimmered with layered chitin plates that shifted like living armor. Her eyes were large and silver. Energy flickered along her limbs. She scanned the valley with trembling urgency. When she spotted John, she stiffened. Her plates rose like blades. Her glowing throat signaled a defensive charge. She lowered her stance, ready to strike. John raised both hands in peace. Slowly, he removed the child from his pack. The tiny one blinked and reached out. The mother's posture collapsed into shock. She emitted a soft tone that resonated across the rocks. She bounded forward with incredible speed, but halted at a cautious distance. John held the child out. The mother approached and gently took her offspring into her arms. The valley fell into silent stillness. For a long moment, she simply held her young one close. The glow from her body shifted into warm golden hues that pulsed softly. When she looked back to John, she did not see an enemy, but a protector of her most precious life. She extended a limb toward him in a gesture of gratitude. He touched it lightly. Her skin was warm and smooth. She emitted another tone, calmer this time. A message of thanks. He tried to communicate with simple gestures. He pointed toward herself, then the child, then his heart. She tilted her head and seemed to consider his meaning. She stepped closer. Her gaze softened. The golden glow deepened. He felt no fear, only connection. A profound bridge between two species who had been locked in war for far too long. Suddenly, the sound of engines shattered the calm. Human gunships swept down from the clouds and locked weapons on the mother. She shielded her child and backed away. John raised his arms and shouted into his come. The gunships ignored him. Orders were clear. Enemy target detected. Neutralize. John sprinted to the center of the clearing and placed himself between the mother and the incoming fire. His suit flared with warning lights. He broadcast every code he had. Finally, the squad leader recognized his signal and commanded the gunners to cease. The ships hovered uncertainly above the ridge. John demanded safe passage for the mother and her young one. The squad leader argued, but John insisted. He reported the truth. The child had been defenseless. The mother had not attacked. He had ensured peace where none was expected. His commanding officer weighed the consequences, then grudgingly permitted a temporary ceasefire zone for extraction. The mother stepped forward and placed a clawed hand on John's shoulder. Her touch was gentle. She looked at him with a warmth that resonated through her entire form. A glow spread from her chest plates, a gesture of deep gratitude, perhaps even a form of emotional claim. Not ownership, but something like kinship. A vow of protection. A promise that he was now part of her story, and she was part of his. John bowed slightly in respect. She responded with a graceful incline of her head. With her child held close, she retreated into the glowing mountain paths. Her light slowly faded into the distance until she vanished entirely. John returned to human lines where his report ignited heated debate. Some saw his act as reckless. Others saw an opportunity. News spread quickly that an Alari mother had spared a human soldier, and that a human soldier had shielded an Alari child. It became a symbol, a spark of hope in a war that had consumed too many lives. Weeks passed. Diplomatic channels opened. Tentative ceasefire zones expanded. Alari envoys arrived. Among them was the mother. She moved with calm authority. When she saw John, she approached and stood close enough for him to see the shifting glow along her plates. She extended her hand in greeting, and he placed his against it. That simple touch carried the weight of two worlds, seeking peace. She communicated through a translator, who struggled with the nuances of her language, but one message came clear. She wished to honor the protector of her offspring. She invited him to visit her homeland as a guest of high standing, not as an ally, not as a soldier, as someone cherished. John accepted. He traveled to the luminous ranges where the air shimmered with mineral particles and the mountains pulsed with internal light. The Alari welcomed him with cautious curiosity. The mother guided him through their towering dwellings, carved into living stone. Her child clung to her, while occasionally reaching for John. He found himself smiling more than he had in years. During long conversations, he learned about their culture, their reverence for family, their tradition of honoring those who saved.